and I'll get started with the talks. So I'll introduce our very first speaker. Tonight, we're starting off with YK Sugi. YK is a senior AI developer advocate at SourceGraph. Also, creator of an open source coding assistant with 1,200 stars on GitHub. He is the founder of CS Dojo, a programming education YouTube channel with 1.9 million subscribers. Please give it up for YK.
All right, so I have 18 minutes. The way I'm going to spend it is the first minute, just setting up everything, getting to know everyone, hopefully getting you to know me a little bit, and 15 minutes, 14 minutes about that of the talk, and then 1 or 2 minutes for the Q&A. How does that sound?
Very good.
So I'll just spend the first minute making sure everything is good. So who here is a developer? Nice, vast majority. Who here is a TypeScript developer? Nice. It is interesting. It's still called VanJS because at this point it could be VanTS, but I guess
we're not rebranding.
Not rebranding. That's cool. It is the underlying thing is JavaScript, so I guess that makes sense. I am a JavaScript developer. I started as actually a few different languages, including JavaScript. Went on to TypeScript, just like everyone did here. And I also do a few other languages as well. But recently, the language I use the most is TypeScript, just like you guys. Bibi said I am a senior AI developer advocate at SourceGraph. That was my title a while ago, a little bit ago. My current title is Developer Experience Manager, which is sort of like a combination of product engineering, more on the engineering side, and a little bit of marketing, like giving talks, going to conferences, and stuff like that. So we're just gonna get started in a minute. But who here is a junior developer? Who considers yourself a junior developer? Couple senior. Let's just say senior plus. I guess some people are not sure. Intermediate maybe. But this is definitely good to know. So this talk right here, 10 commandments for vibe coding, raising the bar so it's production ready. It's designed for an audience just like you guys, mostly senior developers, but it's applicable to other levels of developers, people who are just getting started as well, and even to principal developers. So I'm just gonna get started with this. So first of all, what is vibe coding? This is a term that was coined earlier this year. It actually didn't exist before then. Now it's sort of a popular term. It was really popular, I guess, about a month ago. It's this idea of coding with AI, but not checking every single line of code that AI writes. So if you do exactly that, then that's more methodical coding. So that's a little bit of difference there. And my belief is that this idea of vibe coding is going to grow up to something that's production ready, as I said earlier. And the way it's going to happen is either vibe coders, more casual coders, are going to be senior, software engineers, senior software engineers, or software engineers will need to learn a little bit of vibe coding, maybe a mix of both. So that's what this talk is about exactly. And number one here is that you don't want to rely on it too much if you're a junior. And I want to emphasize this because if you're more of a junior person, some of you are, then I know that it's easy to make big mistakes, architectural mistakes, not necessarily implementation mistakes, because AI will be able to take care of a lot of those, but more fundamental mistakes at the beginning of the project or whatever task that you're working on. So it's important to use it slightly differently. You want to ask a lot of basic questions, fundamental questions, to understand what the project is about, how the project is structured, to understand a little bit better about the technology that you're using. I actually got some pushback on this point, like oh, you're discriminating against a junior, but that's not what I'm doing here, because anyone can be a junior depending on the context you're working on. For example, I'm not familiar with Rust, so if I'm working with Rust, I'm more of a junior, so I need to ask stuff like, should I use this framework versus this other framework? Number two is you want to learn to break down a large problem into smaller ones. This was true even before AI. and it's still applicable with vibe coding. So this is a quick example. It might be kind of hard to see, but it is an actual project I wanted to build, but it was too hard to build, with AI in a single shot. So I decided to simplify it, and I kept simplifying it further and further until it was simple enough for AI to build. Another way to visualize this is like this. You start from point A, whatever point A is. It could be nothing, it could be an empty state, or it could be a particular commit in your project, and you want to get to point B. That might be implementing a feature, implementing a project, fixing a bug, whatever that might be. If going from point A to point B directly is too hard, you need to somehow break it down into manageable pieces so AI can take care of each one. Number 3 is you want to write a lot of tests. And I say this because as AI writes more and more code, naturally AI will create more and more bugs. And there are many different ways of dealing with them, having good guardrails for AI, CI/CD, stuff like that too. But one important one is writing tests. And the way I like to see is if you have a lot of tests, then AI will know which parts of the code base are working exactly. So if you ask AI to solve a particular problem, by describing it, then it might have trouble because it has a large solution space to explore. But if you have good test coverage, with a bunch of test suites, I'm just showing 3 of them here, even with some overlaps, then AI will be able to tell, okay, I know that these tests already pass, so I don't have to look at these particular parts in the solution space. Even if I have AI write these tests, as long as you check them kind of at the high level, making sure there's no like weird mockups or anything, then AI will know that those parts of the solution space, problem space are already working, then it's going to have a narrower solution space to explore. It's kind of a strange concept, but it works like charm, really. And another way I like to look at it is that code is really a liability. I'm not the first person who said it. So you want to be careful about growing your code base in a manageable way. But if you look at tests, I like to see them more like an asset. Not exactly, not always, depending on like how flaky they are and stuff like that. But if you write them right, then they become an asset. So why not write more of it? Number 4 is you don't want to exceed 400 lines of code for each file. This is not a hard and set rule, but I found that when a file becomes 600 lines, 700 lines, or more, maybe sometimes 1,000 lines, it becomes harder for AI to manage it, read it, edit it, stuff like that. So I think this is a good rule of thumb for humans too anyway, so why not keep that? Number 5, a little bit similar to the previous one, is you want to organize your code base well. You want to organize it so that people can find what they're looking for in a not so confusing way. But it's the same thing for AI. If you organize it well for people, naturally it should be organized well for AI to find whatever it's looking for as well. Number 6 is, this is a pretty fundamental one. You want to move slow so you can go fast. This really, in my opinion, comes down to management, CEO, CTO, whoever's in charge, to understand the value of growing your code base without growing too much tech debt. A little bit of tech debt, that's unavoidable, that's inevitable, that's fine. But when you try to move too fast as management, right? When you try to push your engineering team too fast and to try to implement too many things all at once, then it becomes a problem, too much tech debt. So you want to avoid that with or without AI. Number 7 is you want to make architectural decisions carefully. And you might have noticed that some of these things are sort of dull positions. As a software engineer, we should already be doing these things. But with AI, sometimes they become a lot more important, even more important or as important as before. For this one, what I would say is AI is helpful for making architectural decisions. Like I said, you can ask questions like, should I use this framework or this other framework? Should I use GCP, AWS? What are the trade-offs? You can get a lot of information from AI, the past information as well as relevant, up-to-date information. So I recommend being careful about that and getting help from AI to do that better. Number 8 is you want to provide or let AI collect necessary context. A good example of this is I thought this was kind of a dull thing to do, but at the same time I realized not everyone knows how to do that. Is if you are working with the latest framework or the latest API, the AI that you're using might not have enough training data on that particular version. So what you want to do is basically copy and paste the right parts of the documentation. Command A and Control Command A and Control A are your friends, I like to say, in the world of AI. So select all, copy everything, give it to AI, and make sure it has the right context. And you can say, based on this piece of documentation, can you create this thing? And that works pretty well. Number 9 is you want to keep the provided context to a minimum. So it's true that you want to provide a lot of context, but only as long as it's relevant. Because what happens is when you try to provide too much context, the performance of any of these AI models starts to go down. So if you provide, let's say, 100,000 characters, 500,000 characters, whatever that might be, when it's too long, it won't be able to fully utilize the given context all the time. The latest models, the later up-to-date models are able to handle longer context better. But still, it's a good rule of thumb to keep the minimum context at the same time, as trying to provide the relevant context. Number 10, the last one here for now, is you want to go agentic. And what that means is, obviously AI started with autocomplete and being able to answer any questions that you have, but it becomes a lot more powerful when it's agentic, which means it's able to take actions on your behalf. It's able to go to particular URLs or perform a search on the web, perform a search in your code base, run Git commands, stuff like that. One particular thing I recommend is a little bit scary, but giving access to your terminal environment in a controlled way to your AI so that it's able to run things like Git commands, GitHub commands, so that you don't have to memorize individual commands. You just need to know these things conceptually, and then you'll be able to just ask AI to run commands for you, like run a bisect for me and identify this issue I'm running into. Number 11, a bonus one. You don't have to do this one right now, but I think this is where the future is going, where you don't want to just run an AI agent one at a time in the future. You want to run maybe 10 at a time, 100 at a time, 1,000 at a time. And eventually the only way to scale it that way is to provide either a containerized dev environment or a VMified dev environment for your AI agent, so that it's able to not just write code, but also test it, maybe test the UI of it through its computer use capabilities. I want to close this talk with this chart that I created. I created about a month ago, I think. And over time, I've gotten good validation that this is a pretty accurate chart where vibe coding is pretty powerful by a non-technical person already. If you're creating like a one-off project, you can create a lot of value really quickly, but then it becomes harder and harder for you to manage the code base. But when it's done right by a technical person, then you can create a lot of value at the beginning, but also keep going, keep adding more value to your code base without having a lot of tech debt. And I think that's eventually what people want. And by a technical person, what I mean is essentially someone who's able to follow all of these commandments. So if you want to take a look at the blog posts version of this talk, or more related posts like this, feel free to subscribe to my newsletter on the left. And if you want to check out another agentic and vibe coding tool that I've been part of a team working on, it's called AMP Code. Feel free to check the link on the right. And thank you so much. Yeah, questions?
So, anyway, so what I was wondering for, you said that the AI agent will work
Right.
So would TDD be a good methodology to use in this situation?
Yeah, 100%. I don't personally, always use them, but from like hearing from people who have used TDD with AI, agents, works really, really well.
Because I found that it worked really well that way too.
Nice.
Maybe the tests are failing, then it can run over the tests and figure out what the problem is.
Yeah, TDD is the way to go.
Hey, you correctly in the beginning of the talk identified that vibe coding really means when you're not touching a line of code and you're letting the agent do the entirety of it, you're just talking to it, perhaps correcting it in language. Do you vibe code? Have you vibe coded as like a piece of software that you published?
I have. So a couple of things. One is an open source project that I worked on for a while. It's sort of like a cloud code alternative, just for an experiments. I pretty much vibe coded the entire thing. I learned a lot of the lessons here that way. Another one is more of a production code base. It's also another cloud code alternative, I guess, app code that I mentioned. Uh, that one, I'm a little bit more careful because I don't want to push code, into production. That's not good. But at the same time, I don't always, read every single line of code. Like I have AI write a lot of the code, and then I ask a lot of questions, like, what does this file do, and like what can you just walk me through the flow of this file, and that's often good enough. I don't have to like. Sometimes I want to read every single line of code, but not always.
Just a question on that. You said that tests are going to help with the results and AI on tests as well. What if you're creating tests with AI as well as code with AI? What is the borderline of you depending too much on that?
Right. So it is a strange concept. Some people say never have AI write tests because you can't have AI test AI's code. But it turns out you can, and I can't like quite put my finger on like why that is. But I think it's just that it's a different way of kind of thinking about it. If you think about a human is able to write your own code and also write tests to test your own code. And your code actually becomes better because when you write tests, you're kind of thinking about it in a different way. And it seems to be the same way with AI. But again, like you don't want to be too like offhand like with it. You want to examine the tests a little bit. It writes like flaky tests sometimes. It writes like mockups that just pass through. You don't want to do that, but you don't have to check every single line of code, in my opinion.
Yes. So what is your recommendation for the containerized environment? Would you use Docker or like Dagger or anything? Any tool you recommend?
Not any particular tool. It's really any environment that allows you to, have AI run tests, run the code, and if it has a UI access, then that's a plus. So with a container, you might need to kind of use like an in-memory UI library, something like that. If you want to have kind of UI in the environment built in natively, then you might need to use a VM. But I think any of those things, any of those things that you mentioned are fine. Like whether it's Dagger, Gitpod, what else? Podman, whatever you like to use. Docker. Yeah. I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone.